Welcome to another episode of AUGIWORLD, the podcast. My name is Eric DeLeon. I am the current member of the Augie Board of Directors and your podcast host for today's episode. Now, I would like to introduce our next guest. Sam Lytle is from the Vegas area and recently moved to Utah. Sam is the founder of Beyondware, the home of Beyond CAD and Beyond Typicals, and he is also the host of the Sam Lytle podcast and We Make Civil Engineering Look Good podcast as well. Welcome, Sam.
Thanks, Eric. It's an honor to be here.
So for those listening, this is actually, give you behind the scenes, this is actually take two. About 3 weeks ago, I had Sam on, and due to the allergies season here in Texas, North Texas, I just wasn't very happy with the audio. So hopefully we can bring back the magic, Sam. It was a great interview last time, so hopefully this goes as well.
Okay, well, maybe there's even more magic this time.
Yeah. Well, before we start, has anything new happened between the last time we met? Just in case I missed something, maybe you sold another company or you invented another software. Just curious if anything new happened between now and then.
We are cranking away on just making Beyond Typicals as good as it can be.
Right on. Well, I guess that's a good segue into, for those that don't know you, where do you work and what do you do?
Sure. I'm the creator and founder of Beyondware. We make software that makes it easier for 3D visualization in transportation and civil projects. And just a little bit of a background, I am a licensed civil engineer. I graduated from UNLV in 2010, started my career with Nevada Department of Transportation, also spent a year with Kimley-Horn. And in 2014, I started a company called Civil FX, and we provided 3D visualization services for civil and transportation projects. I did that for 6 years, sold that company in 2020, and that's when I started Beyondware, because during that time I realized there just weren't a lot of good tools out there for visualization in civil and transportation. So that's what I've been doing ever since, is kind of making those applications so that engineers and designers and planners can do their own visualization.
Great. Yeah, I mean, I've been following your journey for a long time, and it's just amazing the tools that you're making now. And again, it's almost at the same time, right, that you had to, like sometimes they say things that we create as creators are a byproduct of scratching our own itch or filling a void of a need that we have, right? I mean, is that a little bit of how that played into what you're doing today?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I fell in love with 3D visualization early on in my career, which was good because even though I'd gone to school for civil engineering, I realized very quickly that I probably wasn't cut out for it. But I wanted to do visualization. I just didn't have background in art or animation or visualization. And so I would just use whatever tools I could find, things like early on InfoWorks, which was then Infrastructure Modeler, and later things like Lumion. I would use SketchUp for modeling and Lumion for visualization and rendering. And I love those tools, especially something like Lumion, because it made it so that someone like me without a background in art and animation could do my own visualization. As long as I could do the modeling or get my hands on some models, I could do my own visualization. It was just frustrating because those tools were made for architects, especially Lumion and later Twinmotion, and they weren't built for transportation projects. So when I wanted to do things like advanced traffic or visual graphics or sign creation, they just hadn't been thought about because those tools, I was using a tool for something other than its intended purpose. So and this was actually late in my time at Civil FX, I was just like, I would love to build my own tool, my own Lumion for transportation, basically. And so we kind of started doing that. And we'd been using Unity, but we were able to get an Epic Mega Grant from Epic Games, and so we decided to use Unreal Engine. And so the goal was basically to make that Lumion for transportation an accessible 3D visualization engine just for our industry, and that became what we now know as Beyond CAD.
Now, I'm really big on origin stories. I just love to know the beginnings of things and so forth. So, so again, for those listening, Sam was, started civil effects. So, how'd you, what's that origin story and what got you to that point where you pulled the trigger on going out on your own and starting your own visualization studio?
Yeah, well, back in those early days at NDOT, I mean, I had just graduated with a degree, Bachelor's of Science in Civil Engineering, and it spent a lot of years getting that education. I was married, I had a son, and you know, then at that point, I learned what engineers actually do, which is sit in cubicles and design things and use design manuals and design software and go to meetings. And it didn't take long to realize like I was not cut out for that. I'm a creative person. I was like, what did I sign up for? I have a family to provide for. And so at the same time, I kind of started getting into like business books and podcasts. And I was just like, man, that sounds cool. Like to be an entrepreneur, to work for myself, own my own business. That I think is what I really would want to do. But I just spent all this time and money, getting a degree education in civil engineering. And so at that same time, this is probably 2011, I had been introduced to Infrastructure Modeler and I had used SketchUp and Revit in the past. And I was just like, this is cool. Like this is like kind of like civil engineering, but I'm doing visualization and it seems like people like that. And so some of the project managers at NDOT came to me and they're just like, hey, we have this project. Could you do like a rendering for it? And I was like, sure. And the first one was like a underground high pressure gas line. And they wanted to show how it conflicted with proposed bridge piers. And so I, spent a week or two making really crude 3D animations on that. And he was like, man, this is amazing. And I was like, that's the funnest thing I've done since I've worked at this job. And then, another project manager came to me and there was a diverging diamond. I think it was the first one, a DDI, the first one in Nevada. And he's like, this is really confusing to people. We want to show how it will work. So I made another crude animation. I mean, there were no moving traffic, like no people, no buildings, like it was really bad. But still, like it was better than anything they had. And he's like, this is amazing. We're using it on the news. We're using it in public meetings. We typically pay $40,000 for something like this. And I was just like, $40,000, that's like what I make an entire year. Like, and that was fun. And so that's when the gears started turning. Like, I think I want to do that all the time. And so I knew I couldn't jump right then because I needed to stick around and get my license, which takes 4 years of education. I had a family to provide for. So it took a few years, but from then 2011 to when I started civil effects in 2014, it was just all kind of like, how can I get to that point? And then in 2014, I was just like, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to start that visualization company. So I quit my job and I did that. And and it was not easy. It was not what I expected. I mean, it took several years before I started making any decent money, and even then it was challenging. So yeah, it's realized in 2011 I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to start a visualization company, and then 5, 6, 7 years later, I actually was doing that thing.
So in this journey, what's one thing now that you know that you wish you would have known back then?
Yeah, I mean, definitely that things are always going to be harder and take longer than you probably think they will. And I've learned that lesson over and over again. I'm an optimist. I do a spreadsheet like any good engineer, and I look at the numbers and I'm like, oh, if this percentage of these people download my thing or pay for my service, then I'm going to be making millions of dollars. And it's never that. Like it's a fraction of the fraction of the fraction of whatever I assumed. And so understanding that things will probably take longer and be harder than you plan. And then also like just kind of finding who you are, like what excites you. And that was really important for me early on. Like at first, when I first realized I didn't like engineering itself, like actual designing, I was like, I thought something was wrong with me. Like I was broken because the people around me, they were so excited about it. They would see plans and they would look up the green book of like, what's the radius on this horizontal curvature of this road and be so excited about it. And I was like, this is the lamest thing I've ever heard. And I thought something was wrong with me. but I just realized I was different. Like um, that probably wasn't what I was cut out for. So understanding who I was, what I wanted to do, and then taking the time and patience to get there was really important for me.
So I'm curious. I mean, what made you want to go into engineering? If so, when you went to, I may rephrase that here. So when you went into engineering, did you always have this creative bent to yourself and what I call, I think you're like the king of this as well, of 3D eyes, of being able to see beyond just a detail and beyond just these two, literally beyond CAD, right? Of just the 2D lines and 3D surfaces. I mean, was there any conflict early on when you first started? But obviously sometimes we just like, oh, I got to do the right thing and go down this route. I'm just curious if there was any internal conflict when you first started out in your educational journey of being an engineer.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when I look back to my time at the university, like I would spend as little time as possible on the actual math and engineering and as much time as possible on visuals for my class presentation. Like if there was a group of four, I would be like, okay, you guys do all the calculations and stuff. I'm going to go on SketchUp and make some sort of rendering or animation that we can use for our presentation. But you're saying like, do I have a skill for to take something and understand what is in 3D? I think it's actually the opposite. I think I lack that ability. And so I need, heavy lifting of something that I can see in 3D to help me with that. And I think that's probably pretty consistent across the board. You think about like my parents' generation, they had to see a set of plans and visualize it in their mind in 3D. And we don't need that muscle anymore because video games and movies, everything is visualized for us. And so that presents an opportunity when you go to a public meeting. Um, Back in the day, there would just be 2D row plots or exhibits showing what the road or the interchange would be doing. But now our generation or even generations younger than us will go to that and they would struggle to understand what that means. I mean, there have been times, I've done this for a while, where I've seen a set of complicated roadway plans and I don't know if the bridge is going under the road or over the road. Like I have to sit there and look at and think about it and ask other people. And so visualization is doing that heavy lifting for us and for the people that are trying to understand these projects. And it's important that people understand these projects because a lot of times it's taxpayer dollars and we need to let the taxpayers know what we plan to do with their money. And why I got into engineering in the first place, I mean, this is way back origin story here, but like when I was a kid, there was me and I had three other brothers around the same age as myself. And this was in the 80s and 90s. You may remember the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And each of us, we were one of the turtles. Like we called ourselves, Michelangelo, Donatello, Leonardo. And I was Donatello. He's the purple one. And he's the inventor. He's whatever they need, he just builds it. And I was like, I'm going to be an inventor. I would like play with Legos. I would take things apart. I never put them back together. That probably should have been a sign. But and then I told my dad, I was like, I want to be an inventor someday. And he's like, okay, well, in the real world, inventors are kind of like engineers. So I started my time at college as a mechanical engineer because I thought robotics and hydraulics, all that stuff was really engineering. Spent the first couple of years doing that. But by the time I'd gotten married and I knew I wanted to settle in that area, I talked to a counselor and they were like, you know, there's not a lot of jobs for mechanical engineers in this area. That's usually like in like Detroit or the South, manufacturing. If you want to do mechanical here, you're going to be HVAC. And I was like, okay, I don't want to be like air conditioning repairman, no offense. So she's like, but if you want to be an engineer, you can change majors to civil and there's civil engineers everywhere. So that's when I pivoted to civil. And because I'd been married, I wanted a good job. I wanted to do it wherever I wanted to do. And and even through all that time, I still never really understood what engineers did, especially civil. But that's why I ended up in engineering is because I wanted to be an inventor, I guess.
Yeah, that's isn't that kind of how I say it? If we look back to like childhood and some of the things that we were a part of, and it's kind of cool that you and your brothers all are like, hey, we're the Ninja Turtles. That's pretty cool. Yeah, like likewise, I can look back and, I was always kind of a I guess a natural born leader. And those are kind of always the roles. And then, my origin story with CAD is, my uncle was doing his high school senior project, and he did a drafting class. Back then it was manual drafting in the mid 80s when I saw this. I was 10 years old, and it was just fascinating that, somebody can draw something um, on paper and somebody goes and builds it, right? And here we go, 20 some years later, now it's somebody can model something and they can build it, right? I mean, that evolution is, and you're in the thick of it. So with all the technological advancements that's going on in the industry, I think there's two things. The industry is moving fast and our clients are becoming more sophisticated, requiring more because, like you said, right, the visualization is everywhere within the cartoons and TV commercials and movies that we go see. And so, our clients are getting more sophisticated going, yeah, I want something like that. What are the challenges do you face as a business owner of keeping up with the technology and also with the demands and expectations of your clients?
Yeah, I mean, keeping up with the technology, fortunately, I'm kind of on the Unreal Engine Epic Games track, and they're very forward thinking. And so uh, as that technology progresses, we've been able to progress with it. Now we're using Unreal Engine 5. And the big thing is AI. Everything's AI now for good reason. And within the next couple of years, we have some ideas on how to integrate that to make our stuff even more powerful. But a lot of the challenges that we face specifically is that visualization is common and accepted in other industries. Like let's take architecture, for example. They know if there's going to be a building built, like there will be a render of it, at least an image render, maybe a full fly through, walk through, whatever it is. In our industry, it's not the same way. That's not how it works. Especially, I mean, maybe on huge billion-dollar projects, they'll have the budget for visualization, like what I used to do with Civil FX. But there's still a lot of projects where it's not part of the pipeline to make renders of it, and it still kind of blows my mind. Like a bridge engineer, like this is the year 2023, and they'll model thing or they'll design it in 2D. Essentially, they'll do a few cross sections and it can be built from that, which is great. And that's how the contractor understands it. But like, there's no thought put into like, what would this look like with textures and traffic and pedestrians and trees and all these other things that we need to see to understand the project. And so one of the biggest hurdles we face is people love our software, but they're like, we need to get approval on our budget for this because we've never paid for this stuff before. It's like if I was selling AutoCAD or even something like Photoshop, like there's no question about it. They're like, yeah, we know you need that tool to do your job. But with Beyond Typicals, like the person using it, they understand the value of it, but then they got to go convince someone else to pay for it. And they're like, this happens, more often than not. They're just like, why do we need to buy this thing? We've never bought it before. So helping them understand, like, it's not just a shiny tool. It's not just a commodity, but it actually creates value. Like to understand a project visually, to create things quickly where you would have to outsource that to another 3D visualization company. Like there is a tremendous value in what we provide. It's just the industry doesn't completely understand that yet. And another thing too is just the urgency isn't there for visualization as well. Like people are interested and they're like, oh yeah, that's great. We'll put that into our next budget for fiscal year, 2024. And I'm like, yeah, but like we need sales today. Like who, again, with other sales of other products, there is some urgency where people can buy it. So the lack of urgency and the newness of the technology are the things that we tend to face on a regular basis.
Yeah, so for myself, for being in the AEC, a lot of my core CAD experience is a structural engineering technician, and that's doing bridge drafting and plans. And I was always fascinated that we do, up until still recently, we're still having challenges that we do all this stuff in 3D, mainly 3D surfaces, not really 3D models for the most part. We do our alignments, our grading, all this stuff, and then we come to the bridge, we do the approach the approaches in the road, and everything for the bridge is 2D, right? I mean, here we are in 2023, and just now they're starting to get tools that allow us to do that during the design process, right? I mean, you've seen it with all your clients as well. Luckily, you guys have good modelers who can then interpret those bridge designs. But I always, I just always found it fascinating. Again, I guess it's part of that, the disconnect between 3D designs, 3D lines versus the skill set of and the tools to do 3D modeling.
Yeah, and even crazier is a lot of the analysis, the structural analysis is done in 3D for those bridges as well. Like SAP 2000, I don't know if Revit's structural, those things are in 3D. So they're getting loads in 3D, they're getting analysis in 3D. But then again, that connection between what the bridge designs and what the contractor can build is still primarily in 2D. And we actually
Yeah.
were on a call today because in Beyond Typicals, you can do some bridge design and it's very high level. And the people are just like, why would bridge designers want to use this? Like they have their own tools, their own workflows for designing. And it's like, honestly, most bridge designers don't want to use Beyond Typicals. Like they would find it kind of funny. Like, why are you doing this way? Like, why does it need to be seen? I can't put all my rebar. I can't do my loads. I can't do all these things. Like one time we were talking to a bridge engineer and they were like, why did you put 5 or 7 beams on there? Like I would never show the number of beams until I know the final design. Like I'm not going to try and assume that I know how many beams this structure is going to take. So it's not the bridge engineer. It's more like the planners, the roadway people, the planning people, the visualization people. They're going to be using the tool. They're going to be mocking up bridges. And then in that coordination between them and the bridge team, then they have a way to communicate. Then they say, look, this is what would really work really well when we go from roadway to bridge back to roadway. What do you think about this? And then, I mean, there are some other elements such as MOT and bridge phasing that are really nice as well. But yeah, it's so interesting how progress technology moves forward, but it's not consistent. Like some things move forward much faster than others.
Yeah, well, so there's a couple things I want to unpack. So with that as well, though, right? I mean, and this is what I'm trying to educate the firm I'm at right now, in that the pivot in Utah is probably the best within the DOT space is the pivot to digital project delivery, which is 3D models, bridges, buildings, wing walls, abutments, foundations, right? Anything that's out there that's going to be built is actually a representation of that. And one of the big things that I say is like the technology is catching up, right? I mean, we're getting tools now that allow us to do this stuff. Beyond typical, let's do things like that, InfraWorks and all these other open roads designer. But really the hard part, and as much as the technology is still advancing, we still have to use it. I think that's the easy part, to be honest. I think really what's hard is the mindset and the shift in how we approach the way we do things. Just because that's the way we did it or what got us here isn't going to get us there, right? And so I think that's the more uphill battle that I know I have and the industry has, like you said, right? That disconnect for the bridge engineer to be like, why would I need that? Well, it's almost like, why wouldn't you need that? Or why, type of stuff, are you seeing similar, when you have your discussions with folks, are you seeing a lot of education of why still?
Yeah, and Eric, it takes people like you, like visionaries to there. That's a really key part of this process because when they um, when they see what it does, then they get it. Or when they use it on a project, they get it. It's like visualization. A lot of times with civil FX, the first time it may be a tough sell, but then they would always want it every time moving forward. And so progress is possible even in entrenched industries like civil and infrastructure. A good example is like survey. Survey has been done for a very long time, thousands of years probably. George Washington was doing survey, in the 1700s. And a lot of those processes are the same processes I learned in college in, the year 2005 or something like that. And so that industry was slow, but then along came advancements, along came GPS, along came laser, now drones, and you're seeing that happen. But it's not because the industry just dropped everything and they're like, this looks cool. It's more like there were a few visionaries that said, this seems like it's not just going to be cool, but it's going to be really effective, make things better, more profitable, faster delivery. They tried it. And then that's when the realization happens with the other people. They're like, okay, this definitely is better. And you've seen that shift in survey. And I think, similar shifts are going to happen in other industries like design. Hopefully everything moves to BIM in infrastructure, which doesn't really happen now. And then with visualization as well, like hopefully they see the value in being able to quickly communicate and design using tools that are built for this. It's not just fun. It's not just cool. Like there's true value that's measured in many thousands and probably someday millions of dollars in that software.
Yeah, I think it's twofold. So for myself, right, I'm in my current role, I just, lack of better terms, I'm the new technology guy. And so that's actually a part of my job. And so, and really, when I do my pitch to folks, like you said, to bridge engineers or folks who, why do I need this? I go, well, it's twofold. One is we're looking at new technologies to help us become better internally. So we can plan better, engineer better, design better, collaborate better. That's going to, right there is savings in just optimizing our efficiencies. And in the same token then is looking at how can we then in turn make it an added value service to our clients. Enchant them in a way that maybe some of our other clients or other competitors are doing, because on paper, we're all planners, we're all engineers, we're all designers, we're all technicians, we're all, scientists or whatever it is, right, within our respective firms. And so that's where one is obviously how you treat your clients, right, and all your teaming partners, but also and also the find those differentiators in the services that we provide. And that's what I love about, to be honest, like what you're doing with Beyond Typicals is, being a former 3D specialist, visualization guy, um, it sucked. It really did. You're trying to, you know, I'm trying to remember how to do Max every 6 months, right? 3D Studio Max. And I'm like, how did I do that lighting and textures? I'm like, man, that was really awesome. And, that animation came out really cool. Or, the things that, like you said, right? Sometimes we had to, back in the day, we had to use whatever we had at our within the toolbox that Autodesk provided us, or Bentley, right? And so, but what I like is, like you said, right? Sometimes being able to get that idea out there faster, right? Yeah, you're right. Maybe the bridge span doesn't require 7 girders. It's probably going to be 5 by the time we're done with it, but the overall shape, size, and location, right, is going to give value to the other people within the team. And so, really love wish I had this back when I was doing that actively, but as you know, I'm an internal champion at my company trying to get us to use it more. So what I'm curious about is, part of your journey to get to where you are today was that Parametrics was interested and eventually acquired Civil FX. So what, if you recall, what was that? Where were you at when you got that call, and what was going through your head and maybe your heart in that moment?
Sure. Well, I always knew something like that was a possibility, and I tried to prepare as such. And I actually remember the day, I think it was Halloween Day 2019, a friend approached me that was working at Parametrics, took me out to lunch. I know how some of these things go. I knew kind of what to expect. And that's when we started thinking about, Beyond CAD, kind of filling that gap in our industry of like, we need the Lumion for transportation. And so while I was flattered that they were interested in even having those conversations, I was just like, look, I'm already hiring for this software engineers for this other thing, and I got big plans, and I just don't think what you're thinking would make sense. And and so he's very respectful. But I mean, fast forward like 8 or 9 months, and COVID had started, so everyone was working from home. This is May of 2020. He reached out again, and at this point, there was a lot of uncertainty. There was always uncertainty with Civil FX because it was services, it was project based, but COVID added another layer of that. And so, he's like, let's have these conversations. I just want you to talk to our CEO. And I was like, okay, let's do it. So we talked, and I basically said, if I can keep doing the software stuff on my own thing, let's talk about the services side of the business, which was about 7 employees, was functioning on its own largely without me. And so that's where things really started to take hold as far as those conversations went. And that's ultimately what happened is they took the services side of the business, and then I went off with a few of our software engineers and continued building what we'd built with Beyondware.
Now, with Beyondware, I'm curious, because one of the things is building a great team around you. So what was that process and finding the folks that you do have on your team? I know a lot of have been with you since that acquisition and stuff like that, right? They remained with you, and you probably have added people. Maybe you've added people since, but how is that process when you're looking at, trying to staff for, for what you're doing now?
Yeah, it's varied over the years. A lot of times it's kind of the friends and family referrals. You usually kind of want to look into that because then you have a connection. You may trust that lead a little bit more as far as a potential hire. There were times at Civil FX where we were scaling up quickly and we would do a formal interview process. We would post on Indeed or Monster or whatever, interview 20 candidates and choose 2 or 3 of them. So, and you don't bat 1,000, and that's just the reality of the world. Some of those didn't work out, and you have to lay people off for whatever reason. But I think overall, I've been incredibly lucky finding some super talented people, especially a few developers that have really helped get us to where we're at. Because I'm again, my background's in civil engineering, and even that's suspect because I've spent most of my time in business and visualization. So I'm just kind of like in all these different things. I'm not good at any of them, and definitely don't have skills to program and make my own applications. And so to have such talented and usually young programmers where I can have a vision in my mind, explain it to them, and then they make it a reality over and over again has been such a blessing. And then recently, I knew we were at the point where Beyond Typicals, where we had kind of product market fit, like the people that were using it really liked it. We just needed to, make sure the licensing and pricing and features and all that stuff matched, and just try and scale it, try and get it out to as many people as possible. And I needed help with that. And I had an existing customer that kind of hinted to me that if there was ever an opportunity, he would love to come work and do this full time. And you don't get that a lot. I mean, existing customers, these are engineers that have been doing this for a long time. And so it's Brian Strofe, and he joined me in December of 2020, and he's been absolutely amazing in doing just that, in taking what we have in Beyond Typicals and taking it out to the world and saying and showing it to people. I quit my job just to talk about this software. That's how good it is. And so again, you don't bat 1,000 with hiring. You never will. There will be people that it's not a good fit for whatever reason. And I think you should let them go as soon as possible so that they can get started on their new journey. But for the most part, I've been incredibly lucky with the small team that I've had. And even some of the people that aren't with me anymore, they've been amazing as well.
Yeah, interesting. One of the big things, and so what was the guy's, it was Brian?
Brian Schoaf, yeah, he's our business development manager. If anyone that's dealt with Beyond Typicals, either sales or training or support, you probably dealt with Brian. He's just taking the reins on all that.
What I like, and you said he's a former engineer, right?
Yeah, well, he's still, I mean, we're
Yeah,
both
correct.
licensed engineers,
Correct.
and he's been planning and designing for 15 years in
Yeah,
Chicago and Minnesota.
that's cool because that's what I think. Sometimes some software developers or hardware people, um, they may not be in the trenches type of folks. And so, and I think that's probably a good case for you guys, right? You guys have a little bit of leverage in how you can approach individual professionals and firms because you're them. You're them, right? You're making the tools for yourselves, right? And so I think there's you could create, in my opinion, because I've seen it when I was hustling the selling of LiDAR services with the partner that we had out of Utah. They were the hardware, software. They partnered with the company I was at, and so we were the engineering, technician, the engineering firm that was in partnership with them. And it seems like it was a good one-two punch. They would give the spiel. This is how you use the technology. This is the laser scanner, and then I'd come in and sell on well, this is how we use it as an engineering firm. These are the deliverables that we make. These are the softwares that we use. And you can see the shift in people and their demeanor, and they start opening up more in that because we were able to be more relatable. Are you guys, I mean, I can almost guarantee you're having success with Brian and yourself being able to make your product relatable.
Yeah, no, we're doing something very similar when we talk to clients. Usually we're both on there, at least at this point in time. And usually I start out, but I don't, I mean, I'm a licensed engineer technically, and I've done a little bit of engineering, but again, I've dabbled more in business and 3D visualization than engineering itself. And so I'll tell my story. I'll give a high level view of kind of what the product does. And before Brian, I'm good at listing the features, this is all the things it can do. But Brian, he's an actual customer and he's an actual designer and engineer. And so he comes in and he shows the benefits. He says, this is how I used it to win work. And that shift, it's very subtle, but it's very, very powerful because he can speak better in a language than even I can. And even then, my background is more in roadway, whereas most of the people using our software is more urban design and planning. And so he's able to communicate to them in a language that they understand. And as the product improves, I mean, we've been pushing out updates every 1 or 2 months, for a while. It's based on feedback from our users and based on feedback from people like Brian, and they see it. They see the assets that we put in, the delineators, the rumble strips, the unique pavement markings or sharrows. Like these are things that if we were some big organization and we saw this niche and we were like, we want to go make this software because we think these people want it. It wouldn't be the same as, we built this because we can see the value in it and we're improving it based on feedback from actual users. So I think that's why these users get excited when they see it, because it almost feels like they built it themselves because it was built by people just like them.
Yeah, I mean, I follow you guys on LinkedIn. I think you guys are, if I give you kudos to you and Brian, you guys are doing a really good job of showing off the technology, but also showing real world situations. Because that's what I just love about you guys, to be honest, right? Is that, yeah, he is a customer, you are a former customer, because again, you're making the tools that you would have wanted if you were sitting at these engineering firms to do your job very well, right? And at the end of the day, you guys, your advantage, right, is being small, right? And you guys can pivot and be more nimble than some of the bigger companies in the industry, which, by far, some of your solutions, meets and exceeds the needs that we have, currently. So, thank you for doing that. I think it's great. You're definitely helping with the industry. So with that said, what does the future, I mean, of Beyond Typicals look like?
Yeah, and I guess just to tie in the origin story with your last point, with Beyond CAD, which again is our first product, it was an idea that I had, and I thought the world needed it. I was like, I could have used this. I ran a 3D visualization studio in transportation. There's like 5 other people like that in the entire world. So there must be other people. And when we put it out to the world, there wasn't as many people as I thought. And even then, the software wasn't good as it should have been. And so Beyond CAD at this point, we're actually not even actively selling it. We will give it access to it to any of our existing Beyond Typicals users. But we paused development because, and again, Beyond Typicals was a spin-off. It was supposed to be a feature of BeyondCAD. We were just like, oh, we're going to do this 3D section creator. Maybe we should make it its own product, make it its own product, give it out to early access to our BeyondCAD users. And they were just like, BeyondCAD seems okay, potential there, but Beyond Typicals, we use this thing every single day. And so it didn't take many of those conversations to just finally say, let's go all in on Beyond Typicals. Let's pause BeyondCAD. Let's look at that and see where we're at in the future with that. And so again, Beyond CAD was kind of like I was forcing it upon the industry, whereas Beyond Typicals was more organic. Like people were like, we like this. If we could only do this thing, and then we'd add that feature. And if we could only do this thing, and then we'd add that feature. And then it just kept growing organically from there. So yeah, beyond CAD, I think there still will be a need for that in the future. We hope to revisit it. But for now, it's Beyond Typicals. As far as the future, I see a few other software companies out there, both in the civil engineering world and in media. And I would love to be like them, and what I mean by that is we would love to be a multi-product software publishing company where, like you see Adobe, it's not, you don't open Adobe and run Adobe, you run Photoshop and Premiere Pro and Illustrator and InDesign and all these different products. And so we have a lot of other products that we think about on our roadmap. It will take a while to get there because we're focusing on Beyond Typicals. We need that to grow. We need to have enough customers where we're having revenue, where we can hire more people. But like on almost every call with Beyond Typicals, people just love it. They love the drag and drop nature. They love how fast it is, but they always ask, but can it do intersections? And it can't do intersections. And so it's like, there's definitely a product out there that we don't have, that doesn't exist, that we could make. We're just not there yet. So Beyond Typicals, someday, hopefully we can revisit Beyond CAD, Beyond Intersections, Beyond Streets. We would like to have a full gamut someday. It's just going to take a while to get there.
Yeah, nice. I like that roadmap. Again, excited to get a front row seat to the amazing things that you guys are doing. So, and of course, where we can be a customer, and I'll continue to be a champion for you guys. What current technology or trend are you the most excited about right now?
I mean, it's definitely AI. I know that's so cliche right now. I think the last 12 months, there was a point for most people where their mind was kind of blown. It was for a lot of people, it was when ChatGPT 3 was released, I think in November. For me, it was when DALL-E 2, which is also made by OpenAI, was released last summer. I could not fathom how it could generate an image that looked so good and was also accurate. And now it's even better, like with stuff like Midjourney and Stable Diffusion. And so now it's like, how can we utilize these tools to make our products better and make our customers happier? And so we have plans, I mean, within AI to, like, I think there are going to be some really good touch-up tools. Like you make a rendering, but the streetlight's not right. And so you circle that and it replaces it with the actual streetlight. We want to have that within the next year or two. But I'm even using things like ChatGPT they do coding. And again, I'm a non-technical founder. I don't know how to write my own code. And so I've been playing around with a lot of that stuff. Like, wow, what if I actually could code? Like, what if I could kind of make some of my own stuff? What does that mean for less technical people like me? So there's just so many possibilities out there. It can be scary. I mean, there's jobs will be lost. The world would be changed. I think who knows if the net's going to be positive 10 years from now, but the AI is definitely there. I mean, secondary to that, things like photogrammetry, AR, VR, drones, those are all, for the last 5 years have been things that I've been spending a lot of time testing out and using. But I do think AI for the next several years is going to be headlining top technology.
Yeah, I agree. I'm really excited about it. I've gone all in on, using ChatGPT and even doing some of the voice cloning and things like that. And so it's interesting. Again, it's only gonna get better, or that's where it's gonna get scary. Just the fact that it's gonna be like, wow, you know. And for instance, I know like for a lot of it, it's all prompting, and so like for myself, that's what I'm just trying to dig in and learn more about because it's Chat GPT, Dolly. mid-journey that's only good as the information you put into it. And so mastering those skills will definitely go a long ways. But yeah, like, I've said this a lot of times to others. It's like, we live in an exciting time. And so, like you said, jobs will be lost. Yeah, but it's about um, pivoting and integrating this new tool. It's not going to replace everybody. It's just going to replace the low hanging, the outliers that don't do much. I don't know how to say that, but who are just doing whatever. But again, even for those folks, it's just pivot. How can I pivot? Do what I'm doing and offer an added, looking at it from an added value perspective, because it's there. It's all around us. It's really just our the lack of our own imagination to figure out how we're going to integrate some of this. But it's definitely the next, I almost will say 5 years, but I'm going to say the next year is going to be crazy because things are moving so fast, right?
Yeah, I mean, you're saying you've been messing with voice clone. Like now I'm wondering if I'm even talking to the actual Eric. Like, who knows? Maybe you're just an AI that I'm talking to this whole time.
Yeah, some deep fake. Yeah, if it was, it'd be yeah. And again, that's what the crazy part is. It's crazy, man. It's crazy, but it's exciting time for sure. Um, what are your thoughts on the future of CAD, BIM, and visualization?
Yeah, I mean, I hope there could be a convergence in our industry the way there has been in architecture. I've talked with you about this with you before. Like I see something like Revit and it's so inclusive. You got design, you've got BIM, you've got visualization all in one package. Not that it does any of them perfectly, but it can do all of them, and it's seems to be almost universally adopted in the industry. And so it's like, where is that in our industry? Where is the one place where everything's done in 3D? It's smart. It's attached to databases as far as things like cost and time. Uh, it's it's visually appealing. Like there are things like textures, and you can add assets like trees and cars and people. That doesn't exist. I mean, in you could tell me that it's InfoWorks. It's not InfoWorks. InfoWorks doesn't have the BIM stuff. It's not realistic visualization. It doesn't do any of them well enough. Concept Station, the same thing over on the Bentley side. You've got things like, Civil 3D. I think Open Roads is trying to push that way as far as the Bentley thing, as far as I know. But there's just no like Revit for our industry. And I'm not the one to do it. I mean, we've got really small problems we're trying to solve, but we're trying to solve them really well. But solving the next BIM for transportation infrastructure is not, that's an Autodesk or a Bentley or a Trimble. That's one of them to tackle that problem. So I do hope that they're thinking about that, working towards that convergence, because it's still just so disparate. Like you were saying with bridges, I mean, same thing with like striping, signage, traffic. Like they're just all these different disciplines, and it kind of ends up all in the plan set, which is basically a PDF. But that's it. Like there's no real virtual 3D space. Like where can you find the signs in the same place that the striping is, or the same place that the bridges are, the same places the landscaping is? Like it just doesn't work that way yet. And I hope that it will in the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, I think that's where the thought and concept of digital project delivery or digital delivery is, right. And again, I'm studying it. I'm deep diving into that because it's probably going to take 5 years or longer, just because the nature of the people, unless we're able to get ahead of it somehow. But it seems like for the most part for infrastructure, it's being led by the DOTs, right? The Department of Transportation. And so in those cases, they're really big agencies. So, I used to work for the Oregon Department of Transportation, and things just move slow, just to the nature of it being a gigantic public agency that requires public funds to be able to be dispersed amongst the different sections and to get the funding for this kind of stuff. But they are, right. Utah has a big initiative. I know TxDOT does, and Florida and California. And so I would like to say, the first few dominoes are already in play. Now it's just a matter of getting the rest of the industry and technology to also be created to allow us to do this. And so it's definitely going to be interesting, next couple of years for sure.
Seriously. Yep.
So I'm going to ask you on the personal question. So way back when, I've been a fan for a lot since the origins of you, I think, as a professional, it seems like, because you started your podcast way back in the day. It's the Beyond CAD podcast, and I was there since probably episode one. But I remember back then, and I know your kids are older now, and so you talked about your son being really big into NBA history facts. I think I said, he was somewhat the OG chat GPT for NBA facts, and you were like, yeah, man, this kid he just knows, who the MVP and scoring champion was of 1977 or 78, and he could name off all the champions and all those. That's fascinating. And so one is, and I know you guys, and you were supporting their creator spirit, entrepreneurial spirit, or however you want to call it. So one, is he still into NBA facts? And two is he still doing any kind of podcasting? I know you back, and this has been years, I'm pretty sure that you were helping him with that. So I'm just curious, what's the update of what your kids are doing now?
Yeah, I mean, he took on NBA basketball really early. He's now 13. The podcast was called Son of a Bench Player. I was a bench player, so we would just talk about the NBA together. We didn't do it a ton, but even to this day, I mean, we still we watch the Warriors games usually. Sorry if you're a Portland fan or a Houston fan.
Coming from Oregon, I was a Portland fan.
Yeah, it hasn't been pretty for them lately.
Nope.
So we still watch Warriors games, still way into the NBA. Now he's playing club basketball and basketball with his school. He's waiting on growing. We're still trying to figure out that thing.
Yeah.
And so he still knows a lot. And it's kind of a parlor trick. Like if he's meeting someone and they ask him about it, I'm like, ask him a trivia question, and they'll do something like, how many championships has Michael Jordan won? Which is like pretty easy, like as far as trivia. And so I'll be like, no, like a hard one. And they'll be like, okay, who won the championship in 1978? And he'll be like, oh, that was the Portland Trailblazers. They'll be like, well, who were the players on there? It's like, well, Bill Walton was the MVP, even though he was injured that year. Like, just go on and all this stuff. So his problem is, he's discovered things like friends and girls and video games and other sports like basketball or like baseball and football. So it's not as saturated. Now he knows a lot about other sports. The thing he's into is basketball shoes. Now it's like we watch a game and like you look at a player's shoes, you're like, what shoes is he wearing? He's like, oh, those are the Kyrie 7s or those are the Paul George 6s or whatever. Like he knows every single one of them, way into shoes. But he's got a little brother that's 8 now, and his little brother is just the same way. Like like if you sat down and talked to him, especially about the Warriors or any NBA, like you would be shocked at how much they know. I don't know if it's gonna be useful for them in their actual lives, but like as far as NBA, they know a lot. But yeah, our older boy Jason, I think he should get into like sports media. He really likes that stuff. Like he wants to be Stephen A. Smith when he grows up.
Gotcha.
Like someone who people know and he can give a hot take and people will react.
But better than Stephen A. Smith, right?
But better than Stephen A. Smith. Maybe not quite as hot takes. No, we like Stephen A. We like all those guys. But he would love to. I think we'd like to get him into sports media or even like. I really want him to work at like a shoe store. I think he could really do something like that. But yeah, we think about that stuff all the time because that kid needs a job. He's just only 13. So the law says that I can't have him get a job yet.
Yeah, correct. Well, yeah, good. I mean, that's fun though. I mean, it's, I have 3 kids as well, 22, 18, and 16. And it's just interesting as they come into their own and what they do. My 2 girls in high school. So, wherever I can help them, learn how to do, even though they know a lot of stuff themselves, but how to, YouTube and other things, right? Taking pictures for their TikToks and their Instagrams and things like that. It's fun. It's fun to be a part of it. So, well, good luck. Hopefully,
thank you. You too.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
You're a sneakerhead too, aren't you?
Yeah, I have some Jordans. Again, being a product of, being a youngster during the Jordan era. Yeah, I have several Jordans up in my closet. Pull them out. Now that I'm in Texas, I can wear them more. Back in Oregon, I had to wait till the summertime because it rained so much. I wasn't able
Yeah,
to. I'm not going to wear, my white,
in the
Jordan
mud.
5s,
Yeah.
when it's raining outside. But yeah, I love the shoes. Mainly just, I'm just a Jordan sneakerhead.
Well,
But
Portland could have taken Jordan, but they took Sam Bowie. I mean, too soon?
yeah, for sure. No, I mean, so you mentioned this, so no lie. Okay, so I my professional career, I guess, I was working for I was an industrial designer for a semiconductor company based out of Portland, Oregon. So we went out to lunch. This Gresham, Oregon is on the east side of Portland and stuff like that. And so we went to lunch to the sandwich shop. And no lie, dude, this was 1999-ish, 2000. Some dude was still mad that they took Sam Bowie over Jordan. Seriously, dude. In a heated conversation, I went, dude, get over it, man. This is it's
Well, and then Greg Oden over Durant.
oh yeah, dude. I mean,
Yeah.
Portland hasn't had very good luck when it comes to picks, but nonetheless, and it was 77 when they won theirs, and they had their good heyday with Clyde Drexler, Jerome Kersey, Terry Porter and those guys, and of course Damian Stoudemire, the Jailblazer era with Damian Stoudemire, Rasheed Wallace, and those guys. But
Wasn't
uh,
is it Stacey Ogman? Wasn't he on the
yeah, he was on there for what? Pippen cake.
he's a UNLV guy, that's why I
Oh,
know
that's
that.
right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
Pippen.
Pippen came for a few years.
Yeah, that was crazy. Yeah, and so it's crazy when especially some of those players when they were, um, you know, they had such back in the 80s and 90s, right? It was all about longevity and loyalty, and now all these players, they've played for at least 5 or 6 teams at least. I think what's his name from the Heat just retired.
Udonis Haslem. Yeah.
Yeah, correct. I know he's been there forever and stuff like that, but yeah, man, it's
Yeah. Well, you moved to Texas, which is traditionally a good NBA basketball place, but not right now. All
yeah,
three teams are really struggling.
yeah,
Maybe they'll get Wembanyama and things will turn around. One of those teams for next year.
yeah. We'll see. Yeah, and we've been so busy over here with what the kids do in marching band. I haven't had a chance to go to a game, but we're things are kicking. At least for basketball's coming here to the playoffs and all that kind of stuff. But there's always next season. Um,
Cool.
so where can the Augie World, the podcast audience, follow you on your journey?
LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn. So search Sam Lytle, LYTLEPE. And you should find me at linkedin.com/in/Sam Lytle. And then also just go to beyondwear.com and learn about our products. Again, we're focusing right now on Beyond Typicals. And if you're interested in that, then hit me up and we would love to do a demo because a lot of our customers are really enjoying that software.
Nice. Before we say goodbye, any parting advice or thoughts to the CAD BIM, the AEC community?
Yeah, I think just embrace the future. I mean, embrace technology. Don't hide from it. Don't run away from it. Don't wait for you to have to retire for someone else to replace you or for AI to replace you. Like make the changes in your career necessary to ride these waves of technology because we do have crumbling infrastructure. We need all the help we can get. We need to improve our roads and bridges and go and even go towards less vehicles, like go more towards bikes and peds and complete streets. So there's a ton of work to be done. And if industries are affected by all this new technology, I think ours isn't. I think there's still going to be a huge need for smart people that are willing to embrace technology.
Well said. Well, thank you, Sam, for being a part of the podcast. And for those listening to this episode, thank you for pressing play.
Thanks, Eric.